So hello guys, we're here for the second episode. We're with Omer, the guest from our previous episode, and we are going to talk about what is our topic? Can you remind me?
I think you're the one who's supposed to introduce it, but yeah.
It's about biodiversity and its loss and the causes and harms to the nature and how can we prevent it or provide a solution about it.
Well, thank you so much for having me again on your interview. And I say hello to you and your viewers. So, as we started in the last episode, but we had to stop it so that we could continue here, our topic for today is biodiversity loss. So before I get into the nitty gritty, I just wanted to tell what biodiversity is in and of itself. So biodiversity is like, we all understand in this era of diversity what it is. So diversity basically means, when there's versatility in your environment. When in places like, let's say, if you talk about London, it's a very diverse city in and of itself because there's not one specific kind of organism surviving there. There's not one kind of species there. There's not one kind of race that lives there. It's not one kind of people. It's diverse. A lot of things, a lot of people exist there, coexist there actually. So biodiversity is the same, but in the forests, in the Greenlands, basically. So it's like in the same Amazon forest, you're going to find fungi or algae, or let's just say squirrels, mice, all kinds of animals and insects living together. In the savannas, you're going to find an antelope, the same place you're going to find a lion, even though the lion preys on the antelope, right? But still, you're going to find them both in the same environment. That's what basically, in a nutshell, biodiversity is. It's like the diversity of living organisms in a common or a mutual environment, a mutual habitat, let's say. So that's, in a nutshell, what biodiversity is. So what is biodiversity loss?
Yes, that's the main question. So I want to ask you about the causes and effects of biodiversity loss on entire organisms, microorganisms, animals, and most importantly, humans.
Humans. That's in the last
Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens, to be precise. Okay. According to in our last conversation, we spoke about deforestation and urbanization, how it affects humans and the earth as we know it. So that's basically that's the last straw. That's where it all ends. That's where it's all finished. That's what it leads to. So to answer one part of your question, so as I explained what biodiversity is, what is biodiversity loss is the main question, the main topic for today's discussion, as you said. So biodiversity loss is when, due to reasons like global warming, deforestation, urbanization, industrialization, due to these reasons, when this diversity is affected in a negative way, that's what biodiversity loss is. For example, if I talk about in a humanly way, in civilizations and cultures in different countries, when a certain type of minority is targeted or victimized or, let's say, discriminated, there's a whole lot of people which are going to fight for diversity. In the same way, it's when you target, victimize, or discriminate against any other being or any other organism or microorganism, as you said, that is called biodiversity loss, when they are victimized in any way possible. Even if you're driving a car, you're in one way or another, you are contributing to biodiversity loss. A simple way to avoid that is just drive electric cars, Tesla. But
shout out to Tesla especially.
Yeah, to Elon Musk
And other electric companies.
Of
also.
course, Audi, for example. Audi, they make the Q3, the e-tron, but that's not the topic for our discussion here today. Anyhow, so if we're talking about biodiversity loss, that basically means when you cut a tree, you're not just cutting tree, you're not just, cutting the supply of oxygen and the absorption of carbon dioxide. That's not all what you're doing. What you're doing is you're killing all the birds that live in it, all the eggs that they lay in that bird's nest in that particular tree. You're killing the squirrel that made its house in that tree. You're killing all the fungi, the viruses, not viruses to be precise, but I mean, you get what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
the microorganisms.
we're destroying the whole ecosystem.
Basically, when you destroy biodiversity, you destroy the ecosystem that's living in and around it, basically, right? So those are the main things that cause biodiversity loss. I mean, if I start talking about urbanization, deforestation again, it leads us to where we started initially. But I think this should have been the first question of your interview. But yeah, but that's what it mainly leads up to. So what are the causes? As I told you in the earlier video, we discussed in some length about deforestation and urbanization. That's basically what causes it. So what is the harm of this? Yes, that's a great question. Okay, so I'm going to answer your question by asking you a simple question. So tell me, in the food chain, there's grass,
Yeah.
right? So the antelope eats grass, the lion eats the antelope, right? In this equation, what happens if you take the antelope out, right? In the food chain, grass, antelope, lion. Yeah, that's the chain. If you take the antelope out of this equation, what happens?
Food chain is broken.
Exactly. When the food chain is broken, there's grass and there's a lion. So you have herbs. Let's consider that as a herb. It's a grass. Herbivores eat grass. So it's a grass and there's a carnivore. There's no herbivore in between to balance it out. So what happened? You basically tip over, right? You basically are destroying that ecosystem that lives because of these forestries. So a very important aspect, specifically in forestry, in the environmental sciences, is biodiversity. So you need this biodiversity to survive. And I'm not talking about just forestries or the animals. I'm also talking about the human race. So let's say, similarly, if there is grass, it's Greenland, all green, all grass, nothing else. And so you have the grass, the antelope and the lion. What happens if you take the lions out of this equation now? What happens then? The food chain is broken.
The
yes.
same thing.
Yes, the same thing, but in a different manner.
Different method.
Yeah. So right, in this case, you have the herbivore and you have the grass, right? You have something that's going to eat its food. So you have the food and you have the eater, right? There's a product and there's a consumer. And there's nothing to balance it out because there's no carnivores in this situation. So what's going to happen? Antelopes are going to graze all the fields. There's going to be nothing left. And then when there's nothing to eat, the antelopes die.
From starvation.
Exactly, from starvation. And when they die, of course, they're going to decompose and turn into grass themselves. But when this grass grows out, there's no one.
Antelopes.
Exactly. There will be no antelopes to eat the grass. So what happens? Where does it lead us to? It leads us to, there's not going to be any scarcity. In fact, quite the contrary. We are going to have all grass and no herbivores. And then if we put lions into that equation at that point, then there's going to be grass and lion, but nothing in between. So we need the grass, the antelope, and the lion to survive. Similarly, for humans, if we have, let's say, a farm animal, right? We farm animals to maintain that ecosystem, right? I mean, of course, it's a controversial and debatable topic, but for the sake of argument, let's just say, we have farm animals, right? So we have grass and things that they eat to survive and grow and, at a later point in life, give us what we need from them, right? And then we have us. And then we take what we need from them. And then when we die, we become grass the same way. And then they consume us and then we consume them. And on it goes. So with this biodiversity loss, what happens is when you destroy forestries, you basically destroy the whole ecosystem. So at this point in the African savannas, what's the main cause of death for, let's say, the African lions?
Same proportion you're saying about it.
Exactly. The proportion is not correct. It's not in a perfect balance. So problem is the herbivores have increased drastically. that's because the carnivores have decreased. So when there are not enough carnivores to eat enough herbivores, the herbivores are increasing, right? Because of their increase, the grasslands are slowly diminishing. And with that, depletion of resources for them, now they're going to start to die slowly. And when they start to die slowly, then the lions starve because then there are no more herbivores, right? So first the grasslands finish. First of all, the carnivores, they get lessened. Then the herbivores increase. Then they graze the grasslands. Then there are no more grasslands, which means the herbivores die. And then we're in a same situation where there's carnivores and there's grasslands, but there's no herbivores to balance it out. So that, in simple words, is what biodiversity loss is. I mean, I could fill in hours talking about precisely what biodiversity is, but I understand not many people are interested in this subject, particularly because it's quite boring and quite lengthy. And also, I mean, it's not something that I can talk too much about without boring the viewers and, I try to keep it as simple as possible. I didn't want to go into the technical terms and the technicalities of it. I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritties of it.
Of course, I want you to summarize the whole situation, to provide an answer according to our viewers.
Of course.
Because if we cannot understand what you're saying, it's nothing to us.
In a nutshell, biodiversity means diversity in the bioorganisms. But what bio means is, like, when you talk about biodiversity, it means organic nature, natural elements of what make up the part of the ecosystem, right? Which starts from the bacteria, from the small particles in your microorganisms, right up to carnivores and then humans, right? So that's, in a nutshell, biodiversity for you. Biodiversity loss is when that is being lost to some external cause. And I'm not talking about natural disasters, I'm talking about man-made disasters, right? And what that effect leads up to is what happens after biodiversity loss, which is global warming. And not just that, it's basically the disruption, the chaos that comes in the ecosystem that we survive in. And that leads to death and end. It just leads us
starvation, death, and the
leads
end
us
of
to
the world.
A very dark abyss where there's no turning back from, because there will be nothing to turn back to, and there will be no one to turn back.
People are not understanding the importance of this topic. I have seen many people talking about that environment is not that important in that sense. We're gonna live for long. Our children are gonna live for long, and after that it could be ended. We don't care, but they don't know that for future generations, it's quite important that we should take precautions and amendments for their survival. Without that, what will become of the earth? What will become of the human race? If they're not thinking about the animals, anything else, they should think about themselves. We need them. We rely upon them.
Definitely. I mean, that's in a nutshell. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because
from your point of view, what are the solutions you can provide, or there are some talks about different kind of ways that help reverse the biodiversity in the nature?
It's going to seem like I'm going to elongate my previous conversation, but as I said earlier, just, instead of deforestation, we must focus on reforestation. And when I talk about preservance, I don't mean to preserve it in a man-made way. I mean, the way we're running zoos, no, that's not how we do it. We just leave them be. That's it. In the savannas, we leave the lions be. We stop hunting them. We just leave them be, Of course, if we talk about farming, I'm not 100%, I'm not entirely against it. Like, it should continue because it does contribute in a sort of a positive way to the ecosystem. I mean, to maintain the balance. But I do not consider it to be ethical to farm animals for money. Like, for example, if I talk about crocodiles, alligators, snakes even, I don't consider that ethical in any way. But other than that, if you just leave them be, if you just let them exist in their own way, just let them be, They're not invading human civilizations. You don't invade their settlements, and that's it.
Yes, of course.
In a nutshell.
We have to protect their habitat environment in order to protect ourselves.
Exactly.
Now, what about the broiler chickens? What do you think about that? That is cruel, inhumane, and it causes a artificially manipulated chicken that has no, what you can say, protein element in it.
Nutrition. No
Yes,
nutrition.
no nutrition, and they are providing these to the humans, children's, everyone. What are the causes of it on our lives, and also the poor thing that's being fed in a machine only for consumption? Can you elaborate on
Well,
that?
I mean, when I said that I'm not 100% entirely against animal farming, the reason why I said I'm not entirely against it is because there are some elements that I am totally up against, and one of them is this. I mean, this is not the only way of farming cattle and farming poultry, but as I previously said in our previous conversation, it comes down to capitalism. It comes down to money, right? So poultry farms can work if we keep on farming organic chicken, right? Organic poultry. We don't need to, grow a chicken in a week. We can wait for 3 months. I mean, because it's the volume that matters. Again, it's turning into a business lesson, but we can wait for 3 months. It depends on the volume. It depends on the turnover, right? It doesn't. But what they want to do is they want to make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. So what they do is they're just ruining the ecosystem. I mean, rarely. But in a way, if we talk about the ecosystem, it's also beneficial to the ecosystem because it's not organic. For one, yeah, it's not organic. Even though I myself am a huge supporter of growing things and taking them naturally, organically. It's not organic, but it does contribute positively to the ecosystem in a way, it's debatable, of course, but it does contribute positively. I mean, if I get into the details, there's a lot of stuff that I could talk about, especially about broilers, but generally speaking, because of the procedure that they use, it is cruel, inhumane, but it's basically genetically engineering a lot of things in our feed. Maybe not as healthy, but it's definitely eco-friendly in a way. But according to me, my personal point of view on it is I definitely would prefer an organic way of farming poultry, not this sort of way. But it's safer, it's better for the ecosystem.
Okay.
And I mean, if I start to go into details, you're probably going to understand. But
I'm gonna have boring for the viewers and for
basically it's gonna be basically me talking for hours about it, and
it wouldn't end.
It wouldn't end, definitely.
Pool of knowledge is quite vast. I cannot.
Well, I mean, I'm humbled. I'm humbled that you said that. Thank you so much. I'm just, every day people are learning something new. I still believe education is something you can never fully grasp in this lifetime, at least. I mean, I'm learning something new every day. I wouldn't say I'm full of knowledge. I would just say that I'm trying to learn as much as I can about different topics.
And trying to contribute to society by...
Definitely. You have to give back. I'm a believer, as I said about Mother Nature, even that you're taking something from it, you have to give something back. So I'm taking something from the society, I have to give something back. This is my way of, sharing knowledge is my way of giving back to the society.
Anyways, thank you for your time.
Of course.
Thank you for your precious time.
Of course.
And I feel very honored that you shared everything with us quite frankly, efficiently, and openly.
Of course, I feel humbled that you for your kind words, first of all. I feel humbled that you thought me worthy enough to be on this platform for you, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you, having a conversation with you.
We're going to end the interview.
Of course.
And I think the viewers and my professor would like this interview quite much.
Well, I hope they do. I would understand if they don't, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.